What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. It is Friday, January 28th, and we got a big episode of the podcast in store today. Before we get into today's big news, ask that you guys make sure that you're locked in on all the social platforms. If you're watching on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, kindly ask that you subscribe to the channel to help support what we're doing covering the Ducks. And then also make sure you look at Twitter at mtorresports is where you can find me. Really big to follow me there so that you don't miss any of the updates that are coming out. It's obviously a lot easier to tweet out the comings and goings of Oregon football and Oregon athletics over there versus, waiting for every video. But if you're watching the video, hit that notification bell as well so that you don't miss out on future videos. With all that being said, man, it is a huge weekend here in Eugene for Dan Lanning and his new coaching staff as the Ducks try to close out strong in the 2022 recruiting class. Tons of big visitors on campus this weekend, both officially and unofficially. We do have a pretty in-depth list of the visitors over on Ducks Digest right now. So if you guys are looking to see who's on campus in Eugene this weekend, that's a great resource to check it out and see kind of what's going on in Eugene. But the big news of the day is 2022 cornerback Khamari Terrell from Shoemaker High School out in Texas has committed to the Oregon Ducks. Ducks get some help at a major position of need, and you get a huge piece of momentum heading into that big weekend. I think another thing that's worth mentioning is that Terrell isn't on campus this weekend. He was on campus last weekend. And for the Ducks, that's really where they really came on strong. I think after that visit went really well from what I've heard. And they were really in the driver's seat, from then on. And if you're kind of just looking at him more as a prospect, listed at 6'1", 180 pounds, and some other schools were involved here, but not a super highly coveted guy. But I don't think that that's a bad thing at all for the Ducks here. His 247 Sports profile lists out 8 offers in total. Some of the main competition for the Ducks here in this recruitment, we're looking at schools like Florida and Baylor. And then you also have offers from Mississippi State and Clemson as well. But super important for the Ducks to get back into the state of Texas. When you look at them having at 1.5 verbal commitments in the 2022 recruiting class, that was under Mario Cristobal. And then once he left to take the head coaching job at Miami, I mean, all of those commitments just kept coming off the board, decommitting, and then in a lot of cases flipping to other schools. You look at Cameron Williams and Kelvin Banks flipping to Texas, Nick Anderson going to Oklahoma. You don't need me to run through all of them. It was definitely a huge shift on the recruiting landscape for the Ducks. But with Terrell, they get back into Texas, which, as we all know, is one of the top 3 most talent-rich states in the country, along with California and Florida. And then, you look at states like Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. Those are loaded states as well, but that's kind of the big 3 that everybody wants to focus on for the most part. So Ducks still working hard in the 2022 class in California. We can talk a little bit about that later, but want to talk more about Khamari Terrell. I don't know if it's Terrell or Terrell. Khamari Terrell, let's just go with Khamari Terrell for the rest of this pod. Khamari Terrell, like I said, on campus last week. And if you kind of look at his recruitment, you got to give a lot of props to new cornerbacks coach Demetrius Martin. That'll be his future position coach. And then also Matt Pavlich, the co-defensive coordinator and new safeties coach for the Ducks under Dan Lanning. This coaching staff, they haven't slept. I mean, they really haven't when you look at the time between them getting hired and then already looking ahead to National Signing Day next week at the start of February. They really have been blitzing the recruiting trail, being here in Eugene on the weekends to host these visitors, the prospects that they're hoping, jump on board and ultimately end up playing for them, here in Eugene on Saturdays down the line. And then once the last visitor leaves, or even before that, sometimes I would imagine, the coaches are getting in the jet and jetting off to various parts of the country to see these guys, in some cases, guys that they just saw over the weekend, and just getting back in front of them, having that crucial face time, especially with these 2022 guys. You got to figure that for this Oregon staff that came in late and didn't really have a chance to build a relationship, certainly not at Oregon, with a lot of these recruits like a Khamari Terrell. You want to try to get as much face time as you can. So a lot of these coaches are stopping by schools of these players, meeting their coaches, and building those relationships, and then getting back in front of them, like I was saying. So for the Ducks on the recruiting trail with a 2022 class, obviously the cornerback's a big position of need, and adding a guy like Terrell, I got to keep catching myself. Sorry about that. Adding a guy like Terrell in this 2022 class is huge. He obviously joins Oregon's other cornerback signee now, Jaleel Tucker, out of Lincoln High School in San Diego. Ducks still in hot pursuit of Jaleel Florence, Jaleel Tucker's teammate at Lincoln and former verbal commit, who is in Eugene for a visit this weekend. So really good for the Ducks to get him on campus, get that last impression before he announces his commitment in the coming days. But you have DJ James, who transferred to Auburn, Mikael Wright, who goes off to the NFL draft. And those are not easy guys to replace. And I think when you look at Terrell and kind of just the overall approach for this Oregon staff right now, obviously you have to look at the numbers really carefully, because you can't just take guys left and right just because. I think that's one of the biggest things that we've seen with Dan Lanning and this new staff, right? They're being very mindful and what's the word I'm looking for? They're being really mindful and calculated about who they're taking in this 2022 class. And I would say that I think the guys that they're taking now, in the at the start of the Lanning era, rather, they're guys that this staff feels confident can contribute as early as next year. Does that mean that Khamari Terrell is going to be a starter for the Ducks next year? Not necessarily, but I think that's the level of confidence that the staff likely has in guys like Khamari Terrell and guys that are going to hop on board here to round out this 2022 class. So I think adding this guy is obviously a huge addition, and you give yourself some momentum as you start to welcome and get more guys, more recruits on campus. Another big guy that's on campus right now is a 5-star quarterback in the 2023 class. Hopefully I don't butcher this. Nico Iamaleava Jr. From Warren High School in Downey, California. We got a story up on Ducks Digest right now talking about his interest in Oregon and relationships with Dan Lanning, Kenny Dillingham. So definitely go give that a read if you haven't already. But I think that's a perfect example. They're bringing in guys this weekend that they want to get to commit in the 22 class, but they're also putting a ton of energy and effort into that 23 class, because that's the first real class that will be able to truly evaluate this Lanning staff. And their recruiting chops and how they're doing in that regard. So huge addition for the Ducks with Khamari Terrell. And then I also want to get into a little bit of an evaluation in this video. So just bear with me while I put up these highlights, and then we'll just take a look at what the Ducks are getting in their latest commit. Here we go. Khamari Terrell from Shoemaker High School. I think another reason this is a great addition for the Ducks is because Terrell's a track guy, and you want to get that speed in the secondary, especially when you have, Lincoln Riley at USC, and it seems like every other day he's just loading up with these elite skill guys, whether it be Amario Williams from Oklahoma, coming in and out of the transfer portal, or Raleek Brown, the 2022 running back commit out of Modern Day. So for Terrell, I think some of the big things that stand out for me on tape, the guy's a playmaker, flat out. You just saw it in that last clip. If you're watching on YouTube with us, the guy can make a lot of plays in the air. Really good ball skills. Making sure that he turns his head around and makes a play on the ball. I think that's a big thing that you got to look out for with these defensive backs. Are they making a play on the man that they're covering, or are they making a play on the ball? That really is kind of one of the big things that helps you evaluate, how good of a prospect that you have here. So we talked about the speed. That's obviously really big. And then I think also we see that, he's very technically sound, I think. And anytime you get a guy out of Texas, for the most part, you'll see him going against some really top tier competition. And, here you got a play where he comes down and makes a really good tackle. So obviously you want to get a guy that isn't afraid to come down out of the secondary to support in the run game. And then here on this play, you see him getting in, tackling the quarterback to strip the ball. So again, another example of a guy that can make plays. I mean, you want to get a guy that can lock down and clamp somebody up, but I think it just raises the value for a prospect if they can make plays after, say, a fumble or after, getting an interception. Can that guy get the offense set up an even better field position? Can he take it back to the house for a pick six? So clearly you see the ball skills on display in these highlights that we're going through right now for Khamari Terrell. And I think those are some of the biggest things that really stand out to me, when we're breaking down the tape here. He's also not afraid to get physical, as we're seeing in some of these highlights as well. So, a guy that's not afraid of the contact, can get in guys' faces and go ahead and break up that pass. So I think that those are some really good characteristics to have when you're looking at the defensive back and, what Oregon's looking to build under Dan Lanning and Matt Powledge and Demetrius Martin in that secondary. It's not that much of a surprise to see some fireworks for the Ducks coming on the defensive side of the ball, right? With Dan Lanning being a defensive-minded coach, you got to figure that's going to be where they can really, make their sell to these recruits about, the vision and whatnot that they have, building in Eugene. And then I think a lot of people are kind of asking the question now, when you take a guy like Khamari Terrell, what does that mean for a Jaleel Florence who's on campus this weekend? I think that it doesn't hurt Oregon's chances at all with a guy like Jaleel Florence. I think that it's not a one or the other type of deal. The Ducks did add to their cornerback depth with Christian Gonzalez coming over from Colorado. So again, Demetrius Martin, utilizing those previous relationships from his past coaching stops to likely help the Ducks get Christian Gonzalez. But you have Christian Gonzalez and then you have Terrell in the fold. And I think that the Ducks are in a great spot for Florence. You got multiple in-home visits with him. He was one of the first recruits that the Ducks went to see after the end of the dead period. Coach Demetrius Martin was there to see him. And then you also had Tosh Lapoy. Actually, I'm not sure if Tosh Lapoy visited him. Let me look him up on Twitter right now, because I think that's where I originally saw the post when they were at the bowling alley with the Oregon coaches. So give me just a second. Okay, it was when they went to the bowling alley. You had Demetrius Martin, Matt Powledge, also there. Dan Lanning, you got to bring out the head coach, and Tosh Lapoy, who really has a lot of ties up and down the West Coast. So as an elite recruiter. So I think getting all that FaceTime with Florence is huge. Getting him on campus this weekend to leave that final impression. Jaleel Tucker, his teammate, is also on campus in Eugene for a visit this weekend. So that's really big. And then you also have to think about the timing of everything, right? You have Oregon and USC as his two finalists, and he was formerly committed to Oregon. Obviously is very comfortable with Oregon. And then you have some of those guys that I mentioned on the coaching staff that have gone, full steam ahead, building those relationships with Florence. So this is one of those battles between, if you want to call it, between Lincoln Riley and Dan Lanning, between Oregon and USC for a top prospect in Southern California that I think Oregon is in a great spot to win here in the 2022 class. So gotta still monitor that and see what happens. But those are just some of the factors for why I think Oregon is in a really good spot with Jaleel Florence. Gonna have to ultimately see what he decides, but that's just some more context around who's visiting this weekend. Obviously with Florence and Tucker here, and then look, even in 2023, you got Cole Martin coming to town, the lone 2023 commit for the Ducks right now. He's a DB, super fast, electric, crazy athlete. So crazy athletic. So really, really good to have a guy like him in town. Even with the 2022 guys, just because he's not a 22 recruit himself, that doesn't mean he's not going to be able to help sell the vision of the program to these 2022 guys that are approaching the end of their recruitment. So that's pretty big. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add here. Kind of on Khamari Terrell, and we already talked about getting back into Texas and building some momentum going into this huge weekend. I think that you definitely should check out one of our stories that I posted this morning, myself and Dylan Rubenking, top 10 2022 recruits to keep an eye on for Oregon as National Signing Day approaches. We talked about, kind of what's going on in those guys' recruitment and where Oregon stands, where we believe that they stand with each of those recruits. So that's a big recruiting story to check out over on Ducks Digest if you haven't already. Kind of as we wind down here on the Ducks Dish podcast, kindly ask that you go rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you feel so inclined. I know we've gotten a lot of positive feedback recently, which is awesome. And then go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Oregon Football Max Torres, and follow me on Twitter as well as the rest of the crew over with me at Ducks Digest. Greatly appreciate it. But this is just the start of a big, recruiting stretch for the Ducks, particularly in the 2022 class. So make sure you guys stay tuned in to Ducks Digest and then this podcast, the Ducks Dish podcast, as well as my YouTube channel, because we'll be breaking it all down and bringing you all the latest Oregon Ducks recruiting news. Ducks back in action on the hardwood tomorrow night against Oregon State. The Oregon Ducks men's basketball team has a huge game against Oregon State at home in Eugene at Matthew Knight Arena at 7 o'clock. So we'll be there as well. So we got a little bit of everything going on right now, but that'll do it for me, you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and supporting however you are. And hopefully everybody has an awesome weekend, and we'll see you in the